The big question for me has been over the last years and even decades is, why was Russia demonized for so long? Why are we taught? Why are we constantly programmed to hate the Russians? And why do we think that they are the biggest enemy? Listen, the US just made it official and legal to make America poorer because from now until after the next elections, they can print as much money as they want. The last time they did that, inflation went up 9%. With the BRICS nations working together to create a new reserve currency, the US government just added fuel to the fire. The threat to the US dollar is getting stronger. It's time to protect yourself, your family, and your future. Invest in gold with Noble Gold Investments. Gold is the one asset that is proven to withstand recession, inflation, and just about all economic threats. Noble Gold Investments is here to help you if you want to invest in gold. You will also get a 24-karat, 1/4 ounce gold standard coin for free. Go to noblegoldinvestments.com now. noblegoldinvestments.com, the gold company I trust. Hey, Inspired Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers, it's John Nolan here. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing, and hitting the notifications button so you'll get notified about new videos as they are released. All right, let's dive into it. And we're almost 1.5 years into the Russia-Ukraine war. And one thing that seems to become very obvious and clear is that the story that Russia is this great demon and this bad player that needs to be defeated at all costs doesn't seem to really stick with the populations at large. There's kind of a very nuanced way at looking at this, and it's becoming more nuanced by the day. But the big question for me has been over the last years and even decades is, why was Russia demonized for so long? Why are we taught? Why are we constantly programmed to hate the Russians? And why do we think that they are the biggest enemy? It's an interesting perspective. Of course, we look at the 20th century, we look at the Cold War, then we look at the end of the Cold War, and this is where it gets really interesting, right? So, in the late 80s and early 90s, there was this transformational period in Russia, the fall of the wall, the Soviet Union breakup, and opening into the West. Now, the attitude, the energies were very different back then. And throughout the 90s, there was a time when a friendship was forged and the energy was positive, right? But then, starting in the late 90s, something very interesting began to happen. The relationship started to shift, and you could see that any attempt by the Russian government to really connect on deeper levels economically and in other ways wasn't really met with great response. So, starting in the late 90s and then into the early 2000s, you could see a shift in attitude again, and it was hostile towards Russia, and it kept being that way and increasing over time. And today, if people are believing the brainwashed Mockingbird media, they're being, of course, programmed into hating Russia and the Russians. But the big question is why? Why do we have to fear them so much? And I believe the answer can be found in geopolitics. It can be found in nuclear or any other kind of weapons race. It can't even be found in a trade war. I believe the answer is found in a series of books that was released in the 90s in Russia that sparked a movement, that sparked a consciousness shift that went all the way up into the highest levels of government, that created a transformational energy, and that began being a contagion, a positive contagion in the countries around Russia and the world. This is why I believe we see the current dispute, the war, and the hatred really isn't so much against the government. It is about this movement, about this spiritual but also very practical movement that has began changing the world almost 30 years ago, and it continues to do so. And I believe this movement had to be fought off at all cost. It doesn't work, but that was the intention. What am I talking about? I'm talking about the Ringing Cedars books. And it's a series of 10 books written by a former businessman who, because of a trade expedition to the Siberian taiga, he didn't even know he was going to become an author, but he became an author following a life-changing encounter with a woman deep in the woods that taught him so much about the true history, that taught him so much about what it truly means to be a human being, that taught him so much about all the falsehoods and the lies and how the original culture which was way back present, not just in Russia, but all over the world, can make a comeback in today's world. It was very clearly laid out, and it was so strategically and practically oriented that hundreds of thousands of people really got infused with that energy and inspired and began creating that shift. As I said, it also infected in the best possible way the people in the highest level of government, so they began passing laws and changing regulations in order to facilitate the ideas presented in these Ringing Cedars books by Vladimir Megre. Now, because this is such a powerful movement, and because it is aimed at transforming the power structure and bringing the power completely back to the people, returning the sovereignty to the people actually bringing it back to themselves in all ways, self-reliance, personal responsibility in the right way, raising the children right, all these things, they're all in these books. Because this has really begun to happen, the powers that were, the dark forces that could not stand a wonderful expansion of light, they went and started demonizing everything and everyone that was associated with these ideas without mentioning these ideas outright. They didn't want to draw the attention over to the books too much and to the many settlements that have been created on the basis of the teachings of this book. No, they just went against the nations that were deeply involved in this. And Russia, of course, is the birthplace of these books. And that's why I believe, this is just my opinion, because nothing you can quantify. But it's my opinion, my belief, that because of these books, Russia is being demonized so heavily. Because if these books, the Ringing Cedars books, and they've sold millions of copies, but if they really take root everywhere in the world, and if these principles are rediscovered, and if the cultures of the world realize that these principles were really all of our original culture at one point, a great and even greater awakening would happen. Of course, this is happening. Nonetheless, even though we have a war now, even though we have this great conflict, even though we have a propaganda machine that works 24/7, this is still happening. It is still unstoppable because, as we've said before, critical mass is and has been reached, and we're exceeding critical mass now. But this, I believe, is the real reason. So whether you lean towards supporting Ukraine, supporting Russia, whether you believe in the validity of this conflict that we're hearing about so much, and whichever side you're on, I encourage you to look into the Ringing Cedars books by Vladimir Megre. We'll share a link in the video description. I mean, this has gone so far that these highly successful books here, highly successful, have been even sabotaged to be printed in English, right? So this is currently renegotiated, so there will be new editions in English, but there are available editions right now, and we'll share the link that we know of that has them at the best possible deal currently. We encourage you to read these books, not from a dogmatic religious standpoint, but with an open mind and heart, and really examine these ideas and notice what happens to you while you read these books. Very powerful. The idea is here not to create a new religion or a new cult, but actually remind the human family of where we came from, why we are here, and what we're capable of. Because those realizations will in and of itself take the power from those who wish to suppress us and bring it back to us. It's happening in an ever-increasing scale, and we need to feed the energies of unity, of love, of peace, and of harmony, and understand that the Russian people, the Chinese people, and probably in other places in the world where you think there are enemies, they really aren't. For the most part, most people all over the world have some of the same intentions and desires. And we as the people need to bypass our governments and bypass the quote-unquote diplomats, bypass the NATOs and the UNs, and talk to each other again. We need to reach across the borders and realize we're actually friends, and we can be partners and friends, and we can like and love each other and respect each other's developments and differences. I think this is what is happening right now, and it's unstoppable, even though the propaganda machine is striking so hard. So please check it out. We'll put the link in the description, and I believe that once you read these books, you will understand why I believe this is the main reason why Russia is really demonized, and it really shouldn't be. I believe we have friends there, and I believe we should all really be friends. All right, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for being with us. We love you. We appreciate you. We'll be back with you again very, very soon. Would you like to get access to exclusive content as well as being part of a community of like-minded people posting, sharing, and connecting on a deeper level? Come join the Inspired community on Locals, where we share more intimately and privately and do our Coffee and Truth live streams as well as our Honey Talks show, the only Inspired show with Christine Nolan. The Inspired community is absolutely uncensored and unfiltered, a place for truth, authenticity, and freedom. Join us now at inspired.locals.com or click on a link in the video description.